fallen, Lord Cornwallis is sent south to relieve pressure on the middle colonies. Okay? He hits Charlestown, South Carolina early of that year. Okay? Now he's really meeting no resistance whatsoever coming through the Carolinas at this point in time. Now he has told the local militia, loyalist militia, not to arm themselves, work on your farms, stay on your farms. They don't listen. You ever heard of Battle of Ramseur's Mill in Lincolnton, North Carolina? Well, there's a big victory for the Patriot militia. Now, the Patriot militia was heavily outnumbered, but the Loyalist militia that showed up were untrained. And they were heavily defeated. Guess what? Left Cornwallis with no food to feed his men on the Southern campaign. Okay, this was June of 1780 that took place in Lincolnton, North Carolina. Well, Cornwallis is making his way. Right after that is the Battle of Camden, South Carolina, August of 1780. Horatio Gates is in command of the Continental Army. After the battle, he's nowhere to be found. He has skedaddled. Most of the men that were fighting under his command are dead or captured. Huge victory for the British. Another notch in Cornwallis's staff. Of course, George Washington has decided to replace Gates with Nathaniel Greene, a good Quaker from Pennsylvania. Not many people know this. If something happened to Washington, Nathaniel Greene was next to take charge of the Continental Army. While he's making his way here, they got to do something to plug the hole, keeping Cornwallis at bay. Well, as Cornwallis is coming up, the militia around here are scrambling. You have General Davidson. You ever heard of him? Okay. He's buried right across the street here at Hopewell Presbyterian Church. He was present at the Battle of Charlottetown, September 26, 1780. That's when Cornwallis shows up on Trade and Tryon Street. The local militia know he's on their way, so they're there to meet him. At the center of that intersection is a courthouse. Beside that courthouse is a stone wall. The militia have rode their horses in. Most of them are part of the 1st Mecklenburg Militia. And they are hiding behind the stone wall, behind corners of buildings, and waiting for Cornwallis to arrive, his entire legion. Tarleton's Dragoons. You ever heard of Bloody Tarleton, Tarleton's quarter? His dragoons are leading the advance in. They are in column form, which means they're not in any tactical formation. They're not expecting any type of opposition in Charlotte. How could a town named after the Queen have any harbor ill will toward the British? Well, they come sauntering on down Trade Street, and guess what? The militia erupt with a deathly volley, sending the horsemen riding out. Cornwallis is not happy. This is the first time his men have been turned around since he landed in Charleston, South Carolina. He sends a second wave. It is pushed back. He is noted to put his hand in the air, shaking his fist, saying, "We have nothing to gain, but everything to lose." He sends a third wave down Trade Street with flankers coming off the right and left of the streets. The militia have no choice to mount and ride towards Sugar Creek. Everybody familiar with that part of Charlotte? The battle continues all the way to Sugar Creek, fighting in retreat. When the militia hit Sugar Creek, they disperse throughout the county. Now remember, Cornwallis doesn't have any food. He starts sending foraging parties throughout the county. Every single one of them is attacked and routed back into Charlotte. One of such comes down Beatty's Ford Road. You're familiar with Hornets Nest Park? October the 6th, 1780, 200 British come down Beatty's Ford Road with wagons looking for provisions. The local militia have been warned by the local plowboys, seeing the British column come down Beatty's Ford. They're there when they get there. Now, most farmers have bees on their farms. It's called a bee skep. This is how you kept bees. So the British soldiers, most of these don't have any, they don't know about keeping bees. They're soldiers. That's what they do for a living, right? So, unbeknownst to them, when they lift the bee skep up, that irritates the bees and they attack. Well, by that time, the first shot of that fight is heard, and it kills their officer who was laughing at their misfortune. The militia are in line. They're behind trees, behind barns, and they just wipe out almost the British Army, the 200 men that came. The rest of them are routed back to Charlotte. October the 7th, this jumps in a little bit, Battle of Kings Mountain, 1780. Ferguson is dead, still buried there. His army pretty much wiped out. That's October 7th. Cornwallis gets wind of this. His army has been cut in half. October 9th, he decides to pull back from whence he came, giving this area the name Hornets Nest of Opposition. That's where Charlotte Hornets come from. Hornets Nest Park, Hornets Nest Elementary School, and if you've ever been pulled over by the CMPD, I hope you're not. Hope you're safe drivers. Their badge is the Hornets Nest emblem. All thanks to Cornwallis. So we're going to demonstrate to you the Battle of Charlottetown and the Battle of the Bees. Battle of Charlottetown will come right through here, the house being the courthouse, and then we will shift you up right to the next row of shade, and we'll do the Battle of the Bees. And then we'll be right in position for the graduation. Thank you very much for letting us have your kids for a week. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you in a little bit.